beginning, like the circles that you find in the windmills of your mind.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Stogie Geek Show. This segment even is sponsored by Debonaire Cigars. It's the Debonaire Ideal segment. We're going to be talking about coffee. I wanted to talk about something that's kind of in the Debonaire Ideal kind of wheelhouse about coffee. It's kind of interesting. I see people. Dunkin' Donuts is big here in Rhode Island.
Yes.
And I see people all the time. Like they'll be in front of me in the drive-thru or in front of me in line at Dunkin' Donuts, and they're getting this coffee that is extra, and that's extra cream and extra sugar. It's like it depends on what size you order, but it's like 8 scoops of sugar and like half a bottle of cream, and then they put like a little bit of coffee in it.
Oh,
It's
that's
like
brilliant.
to me, that's not even coffee. Like how do you pair? You can't pair that with anything. What is that? That's just cream and sugar with a splash of coffee.
Well, maybe it's good to pair with Snickers.
It could, yeah. Not Debonaire Ideal, in my opinion. We've always said it on the show. Drink your coffee black. I think gets the most flavor out of it. Now there are some instances where milk and maybe sugar is acceptable. I find that lattes not a good pairing with cigars.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
not a good pairing. In some cases, like a cappuccino, you may do a little bit of sugar, maybe a milk, or depending on how you make your cappuccino and such. But I think to be Debonaire Ideal, you drink your coffee black. None of that extra business is kind of my Debonaire Ideal tip for the week, Will.
What do you think about flavor shots in your coffee? Because I'm not a big fan of that.
No flavor. You ever see what was the Ditka segment? They're like, no fruit in the beer, right? Yeah, no flavor, no flavor in the coffee.
It's kind of like an infused cigar.
It is kind of
exactly.
very similar. Yeah, I think if you're enjoying a fine handmade cigar like Debonaire, you want to pair that with a black cup of coffee, and we've always said it here on the show, and that's just the way to go.
Yeah, my mom makes a really good coffee, but she buys these and sometimes I do like a creamer and a coffee in the morning, right? If I'm not smoking, I will have a little. But she bought this hazelnut mint cream, like that's just coffee killer. I mean, I just splash a half and half sometimes. That's it. But yeah, sugar, no sugar. I never want sugar in the coffee.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yep.
Well, Jay is here with us from Spro Coffee.
Yes. Hello.
Jay, welcome. You're here for a coffee conference.
I am here for a coffee conference.
And you're a Stogie Geeks listener, and you emailed us, and we said, come on down. And you brought coffee and cigars, so that's always welcome.
Oh, good.
We reciprocated with multiple cocktails, so Jay's probably feeling pretty good right now.
I'm feeling quite well.
So our first cocktail, I made some Manhattans. Now, you can see my glass is empty because my Manhattan was awesome. I made mine a little different. I experimented a little bit, and I'm going to make them this way in the future. So those that don't know, Manhattan's one of those classic cocktails, which are coming back now. Everyone's doing the classic cocktails now. And it's essentially 1 part vermouth and 2 parts whiskey, rye whiskey, bourbon whiskey, whatever kind of rye whiskey works well. I used an American whiskey called Sam Houston, which we're a big fan of. It's like $25 for that giant 1-liter bottle.
Oh,
and
not bad.
Right? And you're a testament
great.
to that. It makes a great cocktail. Now, I did mine a little different. I did about 1.5 ounces of Sam Houston, and I did about 1/2 ounce of Zacapa rum.
Oh, Zacapa. Nice.
Yeah. And I tell you what,
23?
I'm going to make my Manhattans that way from now on. That's like my own. Jack Daniel, who came on the show and did a cocktail segment, had made me a cocktail and said, yeah, I put a little Zacapa in it, and it was really good. So I said, man, let's mix it up with the Manhattan. You put a splash of bitters in there. You shake it up with some ice, strain it out, drop a cherry in it, and you got yourself a Manhattan. It's a super easy drink to make at home. I tell you what, with that little bit of Zacapa in there, it paired very well with a cigar. It kind of took that little bit of sharpness out from the bitters, and that sharpness that you might get from a straight like American whiskey like Sam Houston. Bourbon tends to be a little sweeter, so I don't know if I do that with bourbon necessarily because it has that sweetness already. But it's all about balancing. So, I mean, a little bit of Zacapa rum, Sam Houston whiskey, vermouth, splash of bitter, shake it up. Awesome drink to pair with a cigar.
That was great. That was fantastic.
Okay, but now we're going to talk coffee.
Yes, let's talk coffee.
And you're going to make some coffee live
are
on
gonna
the
make
air.
coffee.
Dude, that's awesome.
Should we make it now? Or?
Oh, yeah, sure.
All right,
that's
let's
fine.
do
I'm
that.
going to be up all night.
That's kind of the idea.
Tune in for the after show. We'll be broadcasting till 3 a.m.
So we're taking basically the Fratello coffee that we make for Fratello Cigars. And
this is your full-time gig.
This is what I do for a living. And
it's awesome.
We are making the coffee with about 80 grams of ground coffee for the French press. We're doing a very coarse grind. And then we're going to add water to it.
Is it like the coarsest grind you can get from your grinder?
Pretty much. That's probably the easiest way to do it, yeah. I mean, you can certainly get as geeky as you want about how to grind it and everything, but you don't necessarily have to be that.
Well, that smells wonderful already. Well,
yeah, you like that?
The water in
Here,
there.
have a better, closer smell to it.
Oh, yeah, that smells awesome, dude. And now you're just letting it steep now, right?
Right, we're just letting it steep.
Right?
So what we're doing is that pour the water on the freshly ground coffee. It's going to bloom a little bit, so that's basically the CO2 gases that are inherent in the coffee are going to bubble up. Mm-hmm. So we're only putting a little bit of the water in right now.
Oh, so you didn't fill up all the way purposely. You left it.
Right. So what we're going to do is let that, maybe after about a minute, we're going to let that bubble off, and then there's a cap that forms. And then after the cap is formed, we're going to pour the rest of the water to break down that cap and fully saturate all the coffee.
Oh, so if you can switch to that shot. So you're saying that foam will form after you pour a little bit of that water. I don't make I didn't know that. That's wow.
Yeah, you can see it already. It actually happens. That kind of bubbling actually happens with fresh coffee in any kind of brew method, whether you're doing it in a home pot or anything. It's a natural occurrence with fresh coffee.
And now your coffee grinder matters. Because I have the Breville here, and you guys were like all impressed. You brought your buddy Sly here with you in the audience.
Yes, Sly's here.
You guys were like, oh, you got a Breville. That's
nice stuff.
But now, from what I understand, and you can elaborate on this, is that the coffee grinder, the Breville, one of the reasons that we went high end with that is because it doesn't heat up the beans as it grinds it, right?
Right, that's part of it, and also the type of what we call burrs, the discs that actually grind the coffee. If they're using actual burr grinders, it tends to do a more even grind instead of the whirly blade. And the whirly birds, they give uneven grind size particulates. So you've got a lot of fines, a lot of coarses, no matter how long you're doing it. So the extraction of the coffee into the liquid can be very uneven.
I gotcha.
So that's the big thing, But either way, the question people always ask is, should I get it pre-ground or should I grind it home? And even if you're using the Whirlybird style grinder, which may not necessarily be ideal, it's still going to be superior to use that right before you make the coffee instead of having it pre-ground at whatever coffee place you're buying it.
That's good to know.
So that's about enough time.
So we're going to pour the rest of that water in there.
Exactly. A little of the rest of the water.
And now, when you pour the rest of the water in, are we going to let that steep anymore?
That's correct. It's going to steep for a total of 4 minutes.
Okay.
And that's including the earlier part of it.
Okay, so we got another 3 minutes to go.
Right, exactly.
And now, you make coffee for Fratello. Do you make it for other people, so you basically kind of like rebrand?
Well, actually, what we do, we're actually a retailer. We started as a retailer, and we also have our own roastery. So we buy coffee from different places around the world, bring it in, or have someone bring it in for us, and then we roast it, and then we mostly sell it in our own retail shop in Baltimore. And about about 18 months ago, I met Omar, and he was like, "Hey, let's can we talk about maybe doing something together?" And I was like, "Oh, definitely." So, really, at this point, Omar is really our true outside account.
Omar's a great guy. It's interesting that we're smoking you brought some Fratello cigars with you in the Corona size. And I was with Omar at another local shop here, Mr. J's Havana Smoke Shop.
Okay.
And Omar handed me one of these. And I was really, really impressed with it. And I smoked several since then. And this cigar is awesome. As most cigars do, this cigar pairs very well with coffee. And it's got a very distinct transition in this cigar as well. Kind of starts off a little spicy, You have
Yes.
some notes of pepper. It goes to almost like a medium bodied, has some kind of almost nutty kind of flavor. Then I find it gives you some of those coffee flavors in the cigar. Fantastic pairing
Oh, good.
with,
Good.
with a cup of coffee.
Yeah, well, this one is a little bit different in that we've actually, with Omar, we've actually developed a blend of coffee to pair with the cigar.
Oh,
Of the
okay. So
flavors
you
of the cigar.
did,
So that's really why it's
okay.
called the Fratello blend, because it's meant to be smoked together.
Wow, I can't wait. It's awesome. Well,
Are you
did
able to talk a little about the coffees that are in that blend?
Absolutely. We've got a Ethiopian natural coffee that's from let me see, look at my note here. It's what we call a G4. It's a grade 4 export natural processed coffee from the La Kempta region. We also have a Las Mercedes Pina 74 that's from Guatemala, and then El Socorro Matalapa that's from El Salvador.
Oh wow!
And so those three coffees combined in a 20-40-40 ratio is what we use to
So
make
you
the
blend coffee essentially like you blend a cigar. Or
Exactly. And it's really interesting. As I've been meeting more of the growers and manufacturers in the cigar side of the business, there's so many parallels to coffee, to coffee growing, like even down to the farm level where the farmers in tobacco and the farmers in coffee are both using, like, their plots of land are called manzanas. They're measuring it out by quintals, which is about 100 pounds. So they'll set it up as a quintal of coffee or a quintal of tobacco. So a lot of the things that are happening in coffee and cigars are very, 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 very similar.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm loving this Fratello cigar. I can't wait to try the
good,
coffee.
good.
Is it almost done?
It
So
is
I'm so
almost
anxious
done.
to try it.
Oh yeah, that's good. That's good time.
And then we press it through in your gigantic French press.
In the gigantic French press, good for parties.
Nice. Do you have coffee parties? Is that like a thing?
Once in a while, we definitely do. We definitely do.
I bet you those can go on for a really long time, too.
What's that?
They can go on for a really long time because you're drinking coffee.
Once people get a little bit hyped up on it, it
I
definitely
bet,
continues
I bet.
on.
Is this really high in caffeine?
It does definitely. It has a little bit of caffeine in it. It's
It's not super strong.
not super strong. I mean,
I
it's
got
about average coffee as far as caffeine goes.
Did you guys want some
Can I
coffee
try?
back there? Yeah, Frank's giving you the thumbs up.
Excellent,
Frank wants some
excellent.
coffee as well.
If we get some more cups? Can we get some more cups, please? It's gonna be a little bit hot, so maybe let it cool. And then what we
I've
like to
been
do in
waiting on
coffee
this.
is we like to
Very
taste
smooth,
it.
Very smooth.
Yeah? Oh,
The
good.
French press, I find, gives you a much smoother coffee.
Yes, it certainly can. It certainly can. And what actually is interesting, we actually prototyped the blend as a French press coffee. It still does well.
Okay, so you want to make it as a French press.
I mean, if you can, it's really ideal. I find the best flavors that way, but it still works fantastic as a drip coffee. It's just a different dimension because in a drip coffee with the paper filter, it takes out all the minor sediment and all of the
Yeah.
oils.
so
that
you
you
actually
actually have
lose
here.
some. So that's why you lose some flavor when you run it through a filter.
Exactly.
When you do it through the French press, you don't lose any of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now the trade-off is that, like in a French press where there's still minor sediments left, there's still some level of extraction happening. So the longer the coffee extracts in the water, it's kind of like it goes to a point where it's taken all the really positive stuff and then can slowly start to leach out more bitters.
I got you.
So if you leave it too long, it can develop more bitter flavors. And then with the French press, there's always a little amount of sediment at the bottom of your cup that
Right.
some people really don't like.
No, I think that's great.
Oh, good,
I think,
good.
I think that means I got a good cup of coffee if there's a little bit of sediment in it, right?
Absolutely.
No, that's excellent. So I can see kind of like on the top of the coffee there seems to be some of those oils too. Is that
That's
because
right.
it's a French press?
That's exactly because of that. Exactly.
Well, that's interesting. It's almost like the oils that form as you smoke a cigar too. Sometimes you notice some oils on the. There's
Yeah.
a lot of parallels here. Now, Will, you're a big coffee drinker as well. Are you? You're probably anxious to try some of this Fratello coffee, huh?
Yeah, no, and definitely when he was just describing the blend, that was just a real intriguing blend, to say the least. When I went down to Nicaragua, I really got hooked on the Nicaraguan coffees there. Are the varietals from El Salvador and Honduras, are they similar? Because they were kind of these medium, I call them medium coffees with almost like a slight cocoa note to them.
Well, they certainly can be very similar because they're all from the same region of the world. What we find, we're working when we try to find really interesting and unique coffees by working with different farms and farmers, and even within a farm, there's smaller lots that can have very, very distinct flavor profiles from lot to lot. You know, a lot of it is very similar with wine, where it goes down to terroir. You know, how in that little tiny plot of land, what is the sun exposure, what is the mineral content, and what is the rain. That all can play a big part in it. So those are different factors that can definitely influence coffees, but it's somewhat generally safe to say that a lot of the Central American coffees can have very similar flavor profiles, definitely.
Yeah, and a lot of, again, what you talked about, we can draw the analogy to cigars. Those factors that you just mentioned, they absolutely affect the vintage of tobacco.
Oh, agreed. Yeah, there's so many interesting parallels that you'll find with coffee and cigars and their production.
So now it's just one blend of the Fratello coffee, and where can people find this blend? Like, how are you distributing it in the U.S.? We basically manufacture it. I guess that's not really the best term. We actually roast it and blend it for Fratello, and then it's actually handled through Omar's distribution network. So if you're looking for it, a lot of the Fratello retailers around the country have them in their cigar shops. Nice. That's
or
awesome.
Can get them at least.
In a lot of cigar shops, brew the coffee in there for their patrons as well.
Yes, some of them, especially like Stogie. What is it called? Stogie. Is it Stogie World in Houston?
Stogie's World Class Cigars.
Stogie's World Class. Yeah, those.
Yep.
Jorge, he's a great. He actually buys it in bulk from us and Omar, and he brews it there at his shop for his guests. So really, really good. Nice. Like that.
Oh,
that is a bucket list shop I want to get to.
Oh, it's a great shop. I was there earlier this year. Beautiful place. I mean, massive, but really, really well done.
Can you describe the process of cold brewing and why you would want to cold brew your coffee, and maybe how that would pair with the Fratello coffee?
Sure. So cold brewing is basically a way of not brewing your coffee hot, essentially. And there's actually several ways that people approach that. Some will use a method that we call the Toddy Style, where they're using, let's say, a pound of coffee to make a gallon of liquid. So they'll take the coffee, grind a pound of it, put it in a container, fill it with a gallon worth of water, and then let it sit overnight, about 16 to 24 hours, and then they'll strain it out, and then that gives them a coffee concentrate that they can either drink straight, thick, or they can dilute it to a normal
yes,
dilution.
So my friend Larry, who you just missed from the previous show, cold brewed some Colombian coffee that one of our friends actually went to Colombia and brought back.
Oh, nice.
Some of the best coffee I've ever had. And he cold brewed it just as you said, and he said that to dilute it with half and half, or like 3/4 coffee, 1/4 water if you want it a little stronger. So you can kind of control how strong that coffee is. It was some of the best tasting coffee.
Oh yeah, that's lovely stuff.
Yeah.
What
is it about the cold brew process that makes it so smooth and flavorful like that?
Well, a lot of times, you've got more time for because it's such a lengthy time. You've got more time for the flavor components to come out of the coffee, and over a slow period, that a lot of times some of the bitters and the acidity can be diminished because of that. And that just helps to make it more smoother, sometimes, and in many places more enjoyable for a lot of people. And those are really to me, those are really the advantages to the cold brewing style. And then, other styles that people use, we use it at the shop for the retail use. We have these big towers that hold a gallon each, and then we put ice and cold water and let it slowly drip through the coffee over a period of about 10 to 12 hours. Similar effect as far as reducing the acidic content, but just a little bit different than the Toddy style.
Well, that's really cool. I hadn't heard of that before.
Yeah, it's not widely practiced around America, but it's quite a nice way to do it, and also very visually, stimulating. So people that come in, they're like, wow.
Yeah, they see a big tower with and slowly dripping. That's really cool.
Yeah, so it's a great way to engage people in discussion, because they're like, what is that? And so then you can begin that conversation about, oh, this is what it is, and this is why it helps, or you might like it better.
Right. So now, if someone wanted to get a little more serious about coffee, like, what do you recommend that they purchase? They probably need to purchase a couple of different things. Like, does it matter how much they spend, what they purchase? Like, what do you recommend for someone that wants to
Well, I think
branch out?
I think it's kind of like, if we think about it as cigars, you want someone that's going to come in. They say, hey, I'm interested in cigars. What should I try first? We always think about like, oh, let's introduce them to something of quality, something nice. You don't want to start them with a white owl. You want to start them with something a little bit better, So I think the best approach, if you're really looking to get into coffee, is to do a little research in your hometown and see what specialty coffee shops are local to you, and then visit them and have a discussion with them, because if they're a nice shop, they should be able to stock fresh coffee. And basically, if you're buying the fresh coffee, that's really the first step.
You're right. There's a couple of places in Rhode Island that make some really, really great coffee.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the Coffee Exchange? They actually sell it online.
I'm not familiar with Coffee Exchange.
They're in Providence. They're on
Okay.
Wickeden Street, and it's probably some of the best local coffee that you can buy.
Okay.
Also, if you get to know the guys at Mr. J's, there's some coffee that you may or may not be able to get from
Okay.
them as well. As they make coffee available in their shop for their patrons that are in the lounge in the back. And it's like a small batch kind of stuff that they get and make it. They're very serious about their coffee as well.
Oh, I'll have to stop by there then.
Yeah. But the Coffee Exchange is a pretty big operation. They've got an online store where you can go buy coffee, and their coffee is spectacular.
Oh, that's nice. That's lovely.
Yeah. But like you said, it's that local shop where you can go buy that fresh coffee. And like it almost doesn't matter. Like the equipment, going back to my question, right? The equipment almost doesn't matter. If you're buying some nice, freshly ground coffee or fresh beans that were just roasted, it's a totally different experience than what you're
Agreed.
buying from the supermarket. It's kind of like that white owl example that you gave. That's some great advice for our listeners as
Yeah,
well.
I mean, like according to what we do in cigars, it's like, you go to a nice cigar shop that's your local shop, and you talk to them. I'd like to buy this. What kind of nice cigar do you have? They'll guide you, and you don't necessarily need to have the DuPont cutter or the DuPont lighter.
Yeah.
Those are wonderful things to have. But you can start out with just a basic,
That's a great
cutter,
analogy.
just to like start off and learn, and then slowly as you learn more about the coffee, then you can really get crazy. There's so many brewing devices and gadgetry out there that, as geeky as you want to get, you can certainly go.
Now, if the coffee is freshly roasted, you want to let that coffee sit and air out, right?
Yes.
And there's a couple of different ways. I mean, you can get a bag of it and open up the bag, but some of the bags of coffee actually have almost like a valve on it.
Yeah, like our bags have the valve that you're talking about right here.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I didn't
you
see
know-
that it was so closely in the packaging.
Yeah, we try to hide a little bit,
Yeah,
so it's
yeah.
not too.
Nice.
But you're right, totally right about that. And so if you want to get a little more technical with it, when you go look for your coffee or you go to the local shop, you can ask them, or look on the bags and look for maybe a roast date. A lot of companies will have sell-by dates or use-by dates that maybe are 6 months from now. You never know how old those really are. But if you find a place that has a roast date on it, like ours will have roast date packaging on them. They actually have the date, and then it was signed by the actual person that roasted it.
Wow, that's
And
awesome.
but this will tell you that, okay, it's roasted on this date, and you can kind of think of it in like 5 to 7 days after the date that's been roasted will be the time when it degasses. We call it degassing. So a byproduct of coffee roasting is CO2 gas. So the CO2 gas kind of builds up into the bean and then needs time to release. So during that 5 to 7 day window, and it sometimes can extend out to 15 to 20 days. It really depends on the coffee. But 5 to 7 is kind of the usual window. A lot of that CO2 is going to degas, and during that phase, it kind of blocks and inhibits the flavor. So, but once you pass that stage, then the flavor really comes alive, and that's really the optimum time to enjoy it.
Nice. Very cool. Will, did you have questions for Jay along the lines of coffee?
Yeah, Jay, one thing that when I have a coffee that if I get like an acidic quality to the coffee, is what would cause the acidic quality? Is it something in the roasting process? Is it something in the brewing process? What are some things that would lead to that? Because that's something I just when I get acidic qualities in a coffee, it turns me off immediately.
Yeah, it can be a variety of things. So it can start off at the farm level, meaning that certain regions or certain styles of coffee tend to have more acidic characteristics naturally. That can be somewhat manipulated in the roasting of the coffee. Some places will, if it's an acidic, a naturally acidic coffee, they can roast a little bit darker to diminish that. Some coffee companies like that acidicness, especially the more newer wave coffee companies. I kind of equate it to you know how there's really a big trend in hops in beer now? Like the more hops, the more marijuana taste you get, the better it is, right, for a lot of people. So in the coffee industry, and especially in the specialty coffee industry, there's a small trend where some people really like that heavy acidity, so they kind of highlight that. Then once you're past that stage, when you're actually preparing the coffee, you can actually, I guess one of the ways to get more acidity in some respects is if you lower the water, the bean to water content, and do what we call under extracting can highlight a little bit more of the acidity. So it's kind of hard to say if it's one thing. It can be all three. It could be one. It just really depends on the coffee and the place you're getting it from.
So if you're going to buy a coffee grinder, should you not go buy that $9.99 Whirly electric coffee grinder? But what you're saying is that's better than buying your coffee pre-ground. So you're taking a step, even if you buy an inexpensive grinder.
Yes.
But then you can go up from there from your grinder, and you can spend hundreds of dollars.
Thousands. You give it the thousands.
Wow.
Yeah, it can be very. Yes, Will.
No, go ahead. Finish what you're saying.
No. I was just going to say nothing. I wasn't really saying anything of substance at that point.
Oh no. Okay, so because that led me to another question I have. So there's coarse ground coffee versus a more fine ground coffee. When should you make it more coarse, and when should you grind it more fine?
That's a good question.
That's a good question. One side of me says to taste. It's about, if you have a coffee maker at home, it's about maybe playing with the grind setting, the coarseness or the fineness, until you find the ideal flavor for you. We tend to, on the professional side, we tend to assign ranges for different types of brewing methods. Like, for example, the French press we use today, we tend to go on the very coarse side. For drip coffee, like you have your drip coffee makers at home, we're more in the medium level. And then for things like maybe an AeroPress, which is this kind of plunger, syringe-looking also one of the looking device, or like espresso, we go for very fine grind.
Is that like a vaculator? Stokey said he used to talk about the vaculator.
Well, there's a vac pot, which kind of looks like a bong.
Yeah.
The AeroPress kind of looks like a pump.
Yeah. And what is it? It forces the hot liquid through the coffee. Basically,
that's correct.
Is what it's doing, right?
That's correct.
Now it's different from the one that like my grandmother uses, which is the one that you put on the stove, and it percolates. Water boils and comes up through the pipe in the middle, and then settles back down through the coffee.
Is it like the big one with the glass top?
Yes.
On it? Yeah, the percolators. Yeah,
yes.
very different from that too.
That makes great coffee.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now that I've had to make more coarse grind because the fine grinds will get through that basket, is what I've found.
Oh yes, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
I've also got those little espresso pots where you put the coffee in the bottom, and you put the water in the bottom and the coffee on top of it, and it kind of boils the water through.
Oh, right. The what we call Bialetti type.
Yes, the Bialetti.
Yes.
I have those as well. And that's more for espresso. We want to grind it very fine.
Yes, exactly.
I got you.
Exactly. And then, there's all this grinding. But one of the other things that's really important is to have the proper amount of coffee.
I was going to ask you about that. Like, what's your water to coffee ratio?
So, ideally, we want the rule of thumb that we use is 2 grams of coffee for every finished ounce. So really, we use scales to achieve this. So that tends to give just the right amount of coffee to water ratio.
So 2 grams of coffee for every ounce of water.
Every finished ounce.
So what do you mean by
meaning
finished?
that if you want to make a 12-ounce cup, you're going to use 24 grams.
Oh, so okay, so you're doubling your water basically at that point per gram. Is that
Well,
what
no,
you're
no. It actually works out to so when you're using 24 grams of coffee to make a 12-ounce cup, you're actually going to use about 14 ounces of water.
Okay.
And then the other 2 ounces are kind of held. They're saturating the grind, so they don't come out.
I was going to ask what the ratio was of coffee to water to how much extra water you need, which you're going to lose to saturation.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So it's about. I mean, it's not too much. If you want to do, maybe I guess the best maybe 1.2 ounces for every 2 grams.
Right, to account for that extra.
To account for that's probably the.
Yeah. That's a lot of math.
Yeah,
I need to write
that's
that
why
down.
That's why I try to cut that out. It's like,
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, Jay, by all means, don't go anywhere. Stick around. We're going to talk about our Stogies of the Week.
all right, excellent.
We're going to continue to drink coffee and stay up all night and smoke cigars. And we're going to talk about our Stogies of the Week next. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. Jay, thank you very much. That was very informative.
That was great.
It was
come
awesome.
back on again, please.
Yeah,
Thank you, Will. Thank you,
definitely.
Paul. Appreciate
So
it.
we're going to take a short break, come back, and before we do that, we're going to ask Jay the 5 questions.
Oh,
I
God.
almost forgot.
Here's the thing. I've been listening to the Coffee Geeks podcast. The Stogie Geeks podcast since May when I found you guys, and I've listened to a lot of the back catalog, and I've listened to these 5 questions for 5 months now, and I'm totally unprepared to answer them. At this point.
Perfect.
That's the idea.
Perfect. So, Jay, 3 words to describe yourself.
Oh, relaxed, casual, and adventurous.
If you were a serial killer, what would be your weapon of choice?
I was thinking about this on the drive up, listening to one of your other podcasts. Gosh, that's a good question. Box cutter.
If you wrote a book about yourself, what would the title be?
A life remembered.
In the popular game of Ask Grabby Grabby, do you prefer to go first or second?
Second.
Wow, that was a quick answer.
Well, I was actually thinking about that earlier
You're
segment when you were
preparing
asking.
yourself for the Ask Grabby Grabby question.
I still don't know how it really is played, though.
It's popular in Europe.
Okay, very good. Very good.
If you choose 2 celebrities to be your parents.
Oh, man. How about George Burns?
Nice. The female is tough.
The female.
For guys to pick.
Who's
Yeah.
a classy woman?
You want someone classy, right?
Classy. You want a classy
It's going to be
mom.
your mom, right?
Yeah,
You
my
want-
mom is very classy, so we want
Yeah,
someone very
yeah.
classy. Isabella Rossellini.
Very nice. Very nice.
Nice.
Jay, thank you very much. Jay's not going anywhere. We're going to come back and talk about our Stogies of the Week, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.